What happens when the man at the top forgets who built the foundation beneath him? I was the architect behind every line of code that powered his company's success. But when his inexperienced nephew needed a job, I was cast aside like yesterday's toolset. What they didn't realize. I never stopped holding the keys. My name is Michael Lorne, and for 12 years, I was the man behind the curtain. While executives smiled on stage and shook hands at conferences, I was in the server room, sleeves rolled up, eyes bloodshot, writing the code that kept the whole damn company running. I joined Quantix Solutions when it was just 5 guys in a rented basement with duct-taped desks and second-hand laptops. I didn't ask for titles or recognition. I just wanted to build something that worked, something that lasted. And I did. Every platform, every tool, every proprietary system that made Quantix a tech darling? That was me. They called me the quiet one, like that was some kind of flaw. But I didn't need to shout to leave a mark. I built the bones of this company from scratch, one line of code at a time. And yet, as the company grew, something began to change. Darren, the CEO, stopped seeing me. Or maybe, worse, he chose to forget who had carried the weight when no one else could. For me, code came before coffee. Loyalty came before lunch. My mornings started before sunrise, often without so much as a thank you. I'd be debugging before most of the office had even left their homes. I wasn't just committed, I was embedded. I treated Quantix like it was mine because, in a way, it was. I poured my brain into its framework, and my loyalty into its future. When we hit version updates, I didn't sleep. When we faced outages, I stayed on calls through the night. People called me dependable, but I wasn't doing it for praise. I believed in what we were building. I turned down offers over the years, big ones. Startups throwing stock options at me, competitors dangling CTO roles. But I stayed. Because I trusted Darren. Because he looked me in the eye in year 2 and said, "This thing doesn't work without you, Mike." That sentence kept me grounded. But years passed, and the man who said it started spending less time looking people in the eye. The whispers started small. Just fragments overheard while I grabbed coffee or walked past HR. "He's looking to restructure," someone said. "Family might be getting involved," another added. I brushed it off at first. Corporate rumors were like static, always buzzing in the background. But when the tone of meetings changed and I started getting excluded from strategy sessions I used to lead, I knew something wasn't right. Darren stopped stopping by my desk. Our usual end-of-week syncs quietly vanished from the calendar. Then came the locked doors. Not literal, but digital files I used to have access to suddenly marked as restricted. Systems I'd built now carried approvals I didn't recognize. Darren avoided direct conversations, always too busy or running late. It felt like I was watching a stage being rebuilt around me, and no one cared that I was still standing in the middle of it. The company I helped build was morphing into something else, and I wasn't being invited to the unveiling. Darren called for a company-wide meeting, rare enough that people actually showed up on time. The kind of meeting where snacks are laid out and smiles are painted on too bright. I stood in the back of the room, arms folded, already sensing the shift. Darren took the stage like a man with good news, wearing that practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're welcoming someone new to the Quantix leadership team," he announced. "My nephew, Ryan Caldwell." Applause. Forced, scattered, polite. Ryan stood next to him, all swagger and fresh cologne, not a line of experience to his name. I watched as Darren spoke about legacy and trust, using words like family values and next generation. But the message was clear. Loyalty wasn't about contribution, it was about bloodline. I didn't clap. Couldn't. I just kept thinking about the months I spent rewriting back-end architecture while Ryan probably partied through undergrad. That day, something cracked inside me. It wasn't anger. It was something colder. The next week, I got an email with the subject line, Transition Support. It was from HR, loaded with polite phrases that masked the blow underneath. Darren wanted me to mentor Ryan into a leadership position. In other words, train the person who was replacing me. The arrogance of it made my stomach turn. I met with Ryan, reluctantly, and tried to keep it professional. But it became obvious within minutes. He didn't know the difference between a front-end bug and a security breach. He had the confidence of someone who never had to earn his seat. Asked questions like, "Do we have a guy who handles the hard stuff?" I was the guy. I'd always been the guy. And now I was explaining basic terminology to someone who would soon outrank me. The insult wasn't even subtle. They expected me to build the ladder so he could climb it, right over me. I gave him just enough to look competent on paper. But the real architecture, that stayed locked behind my eyes. Ryan strutted through the office like he owned it, because technically, through blood and ego, he did. He started making changes to workflows he didn't understand, proposing improvements based on buzzwords he picked up from YouTube videos or business podcasts. He treated our engineering team like interns, had them scrapping stable systems for trendy tools he didn't know how to use himself. Morale plummeted. People started asking me what was going on, why I wasn't stepping in. But I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to anymore. Darren shielded him. "Give him room to grow," he told me. Grow into what? A disaster? Every instinct in me wanted to correct Ryan, to protect the product we'd built over years of sweat and stress. But I kept my hands off. Not because I'd given up, because I was waiting, watching, gathering every mistake, every misstep, every security risk his careless decisions triggered. I knew it wouldn't be long before the whole thing cracked open. And when it did, I'd be ready. My last day wasn't marked by a handshake or a goodbye lunch. There was no speech, no email of appreciation, not even a printed certificate to fake gratitude. Just a brief, cold meeting with HR, a pre-written severance agreement, and a reminder to return my keycard. I stared at the paper for a while, 10 pages, full of legal fluff and fine print. The kind of document meant to erase years of contribution with a signature and a severance figure that felt more insulting than generous. Darren didn't even show up. He sent a message through HR, "Wish him the best." That was it. After 12 years, I walked out of Quantix with a cardboard box and silence behind me. But they forgot one thing. I was still logged into the dev environment. Ryan hadn't changed the credentials. No one had reviewed the access logs. They thought I'd just walk away. They forgot that I built the damn doors they were supposed to lock. And they never asked if I still had a key. There's something most non-engineers never understand. Source code isn't just code. It's memory. It's logic, thought, and design structured into something living. And I knew it better than anyone. Quantix's backbone was custom-built over years, layer by layer. I didn't use off-the-shelf solutions. I architected systems from scratch because we couldn't afford licensing back then. Now, ironically, those same systems were irreplaceable, and I was the only one who truly understood how they connected. Before I left, I ran backups, separate ones, versions only I could access. Because part of me always suspected something like this would happen. They fired me without auditing the repository access or version control hierarchy. No rollback plan, no backup sysadmin with real knowledge. Ryan thought GitHub could replace experience. He didn't even know which folders were legacy dependencies. What they forgot was simple. I hadn't just written the code. I was the code. And while they were celebrating their new, strategic pivot, they were sailing straight toward an iceberg I'd stopped steering them away from. There was one login they forgot to disable, my access to the vendor API integration server. It was an old credential, buried deep in a legacy system Ryan didn't even know existed. I had used it for years to maintain stable communication between Quantix's software and our largest logistics partners. It wasn't flashy, but it was crucial. Without it, the automation pipeline would buckle. And now, I had a direct line into the most critical process in the company. I didn't act right away. That's the mistake amateurs make, moving too fast, leaving fingerprints. Instead, I watched. For 2 weeks, I monitored usage logs and system alerts. I saw Ryan scrambling to implement new features, copying and pasting code he didn't understand. I saw the support tickets pile up. I saw vendors emailing about dropped connections. And I waited. Because I knew what was coming. And when the timing was right, I'd make sure the failure was as poetic as the betrayal. It started with small glitches, delays in invoice syncing, data mismatches between orders and shipments. Nothing that would cause panic yet, but enough to slow down operations. I watched Ryan's internal messages to the engineering team, frantic, defensive, clueless. He blamed legacy bugs and pushed for unnecessary updates, which only made things worse. He had no idea where to look, and every move he made pulled another thread loose. Within days, client dashboards stopped syncing. Then reports wouldn't generate. Then entire modules of the application froze mid-task. That's when the panic hit. Ryan held emergency stand-ups at 9 p.m., firing off Slack messages like shotgun pellets, trying to make noise loud enough to cover his incompetence. But the system was crumbling from the inside, not because I sabotaged it, but because he had no idea how to hold it together. I didn't need to lift a finger. I just let gravity take its course, and watched the empire collapse under its own weight. By the time Darren got wind of the full extent of the failure, it was too late. A major investor presentation was scheduled, and the live dashboard they were supposed to demo went completely dark. The boardroom turned into a war zone, projectors flickering, laptops crashing, and executives scrambling for excuses. I wasn't there, but I heard the echoes through my backdoor access to their incident report emails and Slack archives. The system logs were filled with error chains so chaotic they looked like a denial of service attack. Ryan was in full meltdown mode, alternating between blaming the old engineering team and begging for outside consultants. None of them could make sense of what they were looking at. Because the system wasn't broken by force, it had been slowly dismantled by ignorance. I saw Darren's private email to the board, "We may need to reach out to Michael. He's the only one who ever fully understood the architecture." That line. That was my victory. And it tasted better than any severance check ever could. Ryan tried to hold it together at first. He called emergency meetings, fired off memos, and even brought in an outside consultant to do what he couldn't, understand the mess he'd created. But the consultant couldn't make heads or tails of the custom systems I'd written. Every fix they tried only triggered new issues. Data tables crashed. The client portal went offline. And in a stroke of poetic irony, the automation system that was supposed to save Ryan's rollout failed live during a product demo. He lost it. People said he threw a chair, literally, stormed out of the office and vanished for 3 days. By the time he resurfaced, the board had already started asking questions about his qualifications. Darren tried to shield him, but the truth had begun to seep through the cracks. My absence had become their crisis, and Ryan's presence their liability. What once was a golden boy now looked more like a spoiled kid who'd broken his father's favorite toy, and had no clue how to fix it. It started with a polite email. "Hope you're well. We'd love to get your insight on a few things." I ignored it. Then came the phone call from Darren himself. His voice was strained, polite but desperate. He danced around the word help, trying to make it sound like an opportunity instead of an admission. I let him talk. I wanted to hear him squirm, because this wasn't just about broken software. This was about broken trust. They offered me a short-term contract. Triple my old rate. Full flexibility. Just until we stabilize, Darren said. I asked him why Ryan wasn't handling it. There was a long pause. He didn't have an answer. That silence was everything I needed. I told him I'd think about it. Then I hung up and poured myself a drink, not to celebrate, but to mark the moment. They had fired me like I was disposable. Now they were calling me like I was the last life raft on a sinking ship. When I finally replied, I didn't send a resume, I sent a contract. My contract. Every clause, every rate, every hour billed at premium. Full IP ownership of any new systems I touched. No oversight, no reports to Ryan or Darren. I wouldn't just consult, I would command. They could take it or leave it. And to my satisfaction, they took it within an hour. I made them sign it digitally while I sat at my desk sipping coffee, the same way they had once dismissed me without eye contact. Walking back into Quantix wasn't about redemption. It was about reclamation. People looked at me differently, some with guilt, others with relief. I didn't hold grudges against the engineers. They were just cogs like I'd been. But Darren, Ryan, they barely met my eyes. I wasn't there to be polite. I was there to clean up their mess, on my terms. And every time they had to defer to me, every time they asked instead of ordered, it felt like justice finally had a user interface. While I was stabilizing their system, something unexpected happened. One of Quantix's biggest competitors, Argon Tech, reached out. They'd heard about the collapse, the recovery, and more importantly, the name behind both. Their CTO called me directly, offered me a tour, and within a week, I had a proposal in my inbox. Not just a job, an executive role. CTO. Full autonomy. Equity stake. They wanted to rebuild their core infrastructure, and they wanted me to do it. I didn't say yes right away. I let that offer sit while I finished restoring Quantix's systems. Clean, optimized, future-proof. Ryan avoided me the whole time. Darren pretended to be grateful. But I could see the fear in their eyes, the unspoken question. Will he leave us again? I smiled through it. Because they never understood the value of what I gave them until someone else was willing to pay full price. And I was done giving discounts. When I finally walked out of Quantix for the second time, it was quiet. No drama. No press release. Just me, with a flash drive full of documentation and a signed agreement that they would never contact me again unless contracted through legal. Ryan was still there, but stripped of all authority, special projects advisor, which everyone knew meant nothing. Darren avoided the hallway I used on my way out. I left their systems running perfectly. But I didn't leave instructions for growth. I had debugged what I'd built, but I'd also removed all my accelerators, all my secret efficiencies. They'd be able to function, sure, but never thrive. Not without me. And I was fine with that. I didn't burn the place down. I just turned off the parts they didn't deserve anymore. They had chosen bloodline over backbone. And now they had to live with what they chose. Meanwhile, I was already preparing to build something bigger, something better, with people who understood value when they saw it. A few months later, Quantix pushed a press release about a successful system overhaul. They didn't name me, but insiders knew. The dev community knew. Vendors I'd worked with for a decade sent me messages. We saw what you did. My name wasn't on the company's website anymore, but it didn't matter. The respect I had earned existed outside the walls of Quantix now. The engineers who remained whispered my name like folklore. Not because I burned the place down, but because I'd built it, walked away, and watched it nearly crumble without lifting a hand. Meanwhile, Ryan's reputation was toast. The board quietly removed him from the executive track. His LinkedIn grew quiet. Darren retreated into PR mode, pretending everything was fine while the company's growth stagnated. I didn't need revenge written in flames. I got something better. permanence. I didn't just leave a footprint, I left a blueprint they'll never replicate. My name was no longer on the payroll. It was etched into the foundation. At Argon Tech, I started fresh. Clean slate. New team, new tools, no baggage. I designed their systems with the wisdom of every scar Quantix had left behind. I wasn't just coding anymore, I was building a legacy with intention. The CEO there didn't pretend to be a genius. He just knew how to recognize one. And that made all the difference. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just filling gaps, I was shaping vision. I hired smart, hungry engineers who reminded me of myself in those early years. I gave them credit, shared the load, and taught them what Quantix never appreciated: how to build something that lasts. I wasn't chasing money or revenge anymore. I was creating something that didn't just work, but inspired. And in that process, I found something Quantix could never give me: freedom. The kind of freedom you earn when you stop begging to be seen and start becoming the architect of your own future. Ryan thought leadership was about appearances, titles, parking spots, catered lunches. He never grasped the grind, the nuance, the nights spent unraveling a single line of broken code. He wanted power without pressure, applause without output. But the truth? You can't skip the suffering and still call yourself a builder. Real creation comes with bruises. And Ryan, he never had a single one. He saw the throne, not the staircase. And that's why he failed. He didn't understand that respect isn't given in a memo, it's earned in the trenches. In the nights when the system's on fire and you're the only one holding the hose. In the quiet moments when you rewrite the whole damn infrastructure because you know it's the right thing. Ryan inherited a kingdom but didn't know how to wield a hammer. And now, he's just another name in a cautionary tale. A footnote. While I'm writing the next chapter somewhere they value what I actually built. Legacy isn't a nameplate or a last name, it's sweat, foresight, and resilience coded into every decision you make. I didn't build Quantix for applause. I built it because I believed in doing things right, even when no one was watching. And when they tried to erase me, they learned that legacy doesn't vanish with a termination letter. It lingers, in lines of code, in design patterns, in the memory of every system that still whispers your logic. Now, I don't need Darren's approval or Ryan's apology. I've got something better: peace and purpose. I wake up each day building systems that won't just make money, but make sense. And I never again have to explain why value deserves loyalty. If you're reading this and you've ever been cast aside by someone who thought they knew better, remember this: they can take your title, your desk, even your access. But they can never take what you built. That's yours. Always has been. Always will be. If you were in my shoes, would you have stayed silent, or done the same? What would you do if someone tried to erase your legacy overnight? Let me know in the comments. And if stories like this hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a tale where justice finds its way back.